When Ava Gray opened her eyes, she didn't recognize the ceiling above her. A soft machine hummed beside her, steady and cold, and for a moment she wondered if she was dreaming. But the sharp ache in her ribs told her she wasn't. She tried to sit up, but her muscles trembled like they had forgotten how to exist. 3 months. That was how long she had been in a coma, though she didn't know that yet. What she did know was that the room was painfully empty. No father. No brother. No family. Only a folded piece of paper sitting on the tray near her bed. Her hand shook as she reached for it. 5 words, bold and familiar in her father's handwriting. We stopped paying. Good luck. For a long moment, Ava stared at the note as if the words would rearrange themselves into something kinder. They didn't. When a nurse finally walked in, her voice full of gentle relief, Ava whispered, Who was here? The nurse paused, then lowered her eyes. No one came, Ava. The silence that followed felt heavier than the wires attached to her body. Ava sank back into her pillow, clutching the note like it was the last proof that her life had truly fallen apart. Before I go on, kindly hit the subscribe button. And tell me where you're watching from. Hours later, when the nurse told her everything, how her family had stopped funding her care after the 2nd month, Ava cried quietly, the way people do when they are too broken to sob. She barely remembered time passing. All she could recall was staring at the sharp handwriting on that note and hearing her heartbeat pound like a slow drum inside her ears. We stopped paying. Good luck. It didn't sound like the man who once let her ride on his shoulders down their street, laughing until she almost fell off. It wasn't the voice of the father who used to tuck her in after nightmares. It was the voice of a man who had been slipping away for years, long before she admitted it. After her mother died when she was 18, silence became common in the Gray household. Not peaceful silence, but the cold, staring kind that pressed against walls. Her stepmother, Vivian, used silence like a weapon. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply dismissed Ava with a turned head or a closed door. Her father followed her lead. Her brother Noah copied it. And Ava learned to fill the silence the only way she could, with work, long hours, and the hope that excellence would make them see her again. Ava had spent 15 years building things no one knew she built. She wrote systems, coded structures, drafted proposals, and designed frameworks that kept her father's company running smoothly. But when the board met each quarter, it was always Noah who presented her work. It's a family effort, he would say, giving her shoulder a quick tap as if that counted as acknowledgement. Meanwhile, Ava's workspace was a converted storage closet in the basement. 2 flickering lights. No windows. A chair that leaned to the left. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself someone would eventually notice the truth. But lying alone in that hospital bed, struggling to breathe, she finally understood what her mother had once tried to warn her about. Her mother had seen the way things were shifting. She had seen how small they were prepared to make Ava, how invisible they wanted her to become. Maybe that was why her mother spent late nights in her study with her lawyer, Mr. Daniels, sealing envelopes Ava wasn't allowed to open. As Ava stared at the ceiling, she whispered, "Mom, you knew." The thought burned through her chest, soft but sharp, like a spark waiting for air. The door clicked softly, and a shadow moved across the room. For a split second, Ava's heart lifted, some foolish part of her still hoping her father had returned. But when the light shifted, it wasn't him. It was Mr. Daniels, her mother's former estate lawyer, a calm, steady man with graying hair and a patient gaze. Behind him stood someone Ava had never seen before, a tall man in a dark tailored suit, his posture quiet but controlled. Mr. Daniels stepped closer with a warm, cautious smile. "Ava," he said gently, "I'm glad you're awake." She blinked at him, confused. "Why are you here? Where's my family?" A long silence followed. The stranger lowered his eyes. Mr. Daniels swallowed before speaking. "They haven't been here," he said softly. "Not once." Something in Ava's chest tightened, but she didn't look away. The stranger finally stepped forward. "My name is Ethan Cole," he said. "I've been advising Mr. Daniels on certain, urgent matters." Ava frowned. "What matters?" Mr. Daniels exchanged a glance with Ethan, the kind of look that said this wasn't a social visit. "Your future," Ethan said quietly. "And the fact that things in your family's company are about to change in ways you didn't expect." Ava's confusion deepened as Ethan continued, his tone steady and almost clinical. "Your father is planning a complete restructuring of the company. The board meets in 3 days at the Tech Summit in San Francisco." She blinked, struggling to sit straighter. Restructuring? I don't have any authority to restructure.
Exactly, Ethan replied. They've been erasing your footprint for years.
Your accident gave them the chance to finish the job.
Mr. Daniels opened a folder he'd been clutching.
His face tightened with something close to anger. Ava, your father filed documents declaring you mentally incompetent. Permanent. Ava's breath hitched. What?
Ethan stepped closer. He expects you to be removed quietly. Legally. Professionally. He thinks you can't fight.
Mr. Daniels placed a hand on the rail of her bed, his voice low and firm.
But he made a mistake.
A very big mistake.
He pulled out a leather folder and opened it to reveal a set of documents in her mother's handwriting.
Ava stared, unable to speak. Your mother created a trust, he continued.
One your father never controlled.
And she tied it to a very specific condition.
Ethan's eyes locked with hers.
If your father ever abandoned you during medical incapacitation, everything transfers to you. Ava went completely still. Ava stared at the documents, her pulse thundering in her ears.
Everything transfers to me, she whispered. Mr. Daniels nodded slowly.
Every asset your mother owned.
Every share she protected.
And the note your father left, those 5 words, fulfills the condition completely.
He tapped the folder gently.
Ava, that trust was designed for this exact situation. Ethan added, your mother predicted they would try to cut you out of the company. She prepared for it long before she fell sick. Ava squeezed the note in her hand, feeling its edges dig into her palm.
So my father tried to erase me, she murmured.
And ended up activating the one thing that protects me.
Ethan offered a small nod. Exactly.
But having the trust is not enough. The board still sees you as the invisible worker in the basement office. They don't know you're the one who built half their systems. Ava stared at the badge Ethan placed beside her, her photo, her name, and an authorization level she'd never been allowed to access. Your mother had this made years ago, Mr. Daniels said gently. She believed the day would come when you'd need full access.
Ava lifted trembling fingers toward the badge.
For the first time since waking up, she felt something unfamiliar, strength. The suite overlooking San Francisco glowed with city lights when Ethan set up his laptop that night. Ava sat propped against pillows, her voice soft but steady. Show me what my mother built.
Ethan opened encrypted archives.
And Ava watched in awe as line after line of code appeared. Familiar structures, familiar patterns.
These are mine, she whispered. Ethan nodded.
And these, he said, tapping the screen, are the project files Noah claimed he designed. Mr. Daniels spread printed reports across the bed, creating a map of the truth they were stitching together.
We'll need more than code, he said. We need a timeline. Ava's fingers grazed one of the pages. There's metadata in every file, she murmured. Timestamps. Authorship logs.
They'll line up with my login history.
Ethan smiled faintly. Good.
Because tomorrow we start tracing everything. The hours slipped by as the sky deepened outside the window. They collected proof of every system she had written, every structure she had designed. Evidence her family had buried for years. Ava paused only once, staring at a folder labeled in her mother's handwriting, Future Access.
Her throat tightened. She always knew, Ava whispered. Mr. Daniels placed a hand on her shoulder.
Ava, your mother trusted your strength long before you ever had to use it. By dawn, the room had transformed into a small war room. Sticky notes, diagrams, spreadsheets, and old emails pinned to every surface. Ethan clicked through another spreadsheet. The board thinks you're gone, he said calmly. They think you're too sick to challenge anything. That gives us an advantage. Ava nodded, though fatigue crept through her muscles. What happens when I walk into that summit? She asked quietly. Ethan looked at her, expression steady. Shock. Fear. Panic. They don't expect you to show up. And when you do, you lead. Don't hesitate. Mr. Daniels joined them with fresh documents. We'll handle the legal filings before the summit begins, he said. But the moment you step on that stage, everything changes. Ava inhaled slowly. I can't even walk across this room without help. Ethan shook his head. You don't need to. We'll arrange transport, and as long as you can stand with support, the board will hear you. Ava looked down at her mother's trust papers, the lines of neat handwriting she hadn't seen in years. She always told me, she whispered, never shrink for them. Ethan replied softly, then don't. Ava straightened her posture. The fear didn't disappear, but something sharper began forming behind it. The morning of the summit arrived faster than Ava expected. Mr. Daniels entered her suite adjusting his tie, his voice firm. The board members we contacted are waiting for you. But they won't act unless you appear in person. Ava nodded as Ethan helped her stand, her legs unsteady but determined. Good, she whispered. My father doesn't deserve a warning. They moved through the hotel lobby, weaving through crowds of executives and analysts who barely noticed her presence, just like always. But just before they reached the main hall, someone stepped in front of them. A tall man in a Navy security uniform. His badge read Marcus Levi, head of security. Ava held her breath. Mr. Daniels tensed. Ethan took a small step in front of her. Marcus raised a hand. Relax, he said quietly. I'm not here to stop you. He reached inside his jacket and handed Ava a small notebook, edges worn and pages covered in neat handwritten observations. I've worked nights in your company for years, he said. And I saw you. Every time. Late hours. Early mornings. Alone. Ava opened the notebook. Dates. Room numbers. Timelines. Proof. Marcus nodded. Some of us always knew who really kept that place running. Ava blinked back a sudden sting of emotion. Thank you, she whispered. Marcus stepped aside. Make them listen. Inside the main hall, Ava's father stood on stage, confident and polished, ready to announce the restructuring. Vivian sat front row, legs crossed, calm and elegant. Noah hovered near the podium, rehearsing his speech with a smug smile. The audience buzzed with anticipation as the announcer introduced Richard Gray. Applause filled the room. Ava waited behind the curtain, gripping the microphone Ethan had given her. When Richard stepped into the spotlight, she walked out. The reaction was instant, a gasp rolling through the hall like a wave. Richard's smile vanished. Ava, he snapped. What are you doing here? She lifted the second microphone, her voice echoing through the ballroom. Good morning. Richard hissed into his mic. This is inappropriate. You are not well. Ava's tone stayed steady. What's inappropriate is filing documents declaring me mentally incompetent while I was unconscious. What's inappropriate is abandoning your daughter in a hospital bed to cut her out of the company she built. Voices erupted across the room. She held up the folded note. He left this beside my bed. 5 words. We stopped paying. Good luck. She placed it on the podium. That note activated my mother's trust. Ethan switched on the presentation. Screens lit up behind her, incorporation papers, trust clauses, metadata logs. Ava's voice never wavered. You tried to erase me. But I'm done disappearing. If you're still watching, kindly hit the subscribe button, and tell me where you're watching from. The room erupted into murmurs as the presentation changed slides. Ethan revealed timestamps showing Ava's login history, side by side with the projects Noah had claimed as his own. These are her files, Ethan said clearly. Every model, every system, every framework credited to Noah Gray was built by Ava Gray. Board members leaned forward, whispering urgently. Vivian's face stiffened, but Noah's expression crumbled into panic. Richard lunged toward the podium. This is private company data, he shouted. Ava didn't flinch. No. This is the truth. Mr. Daniels moved beside her and opened the leather folder. This, he said, holding up the trust documents, is the legal transfer of authority. Ava's mother anticipated this exact betrayal. Then Ava held up the notebook Marcus had given her. And this is independent documentation from someone who had nothing to gain by helping me. Someone who watched you erase everything I did. Richard froze. Vivian looked away. Noah's breathing quickened. A board member finally stood. I call for an immediate vote of no confidence, she declared. Another echoed the motion. Hands went up across the room. Quick, decisive, final. In less than 5 minutes, the man who once walked across this stage like a king had his authority stripped away. Ava didn't celebrate. She simply watched truth settle into the room like light breaking through a storm. When the meeting ended, people hesitated to leave, as if afraid to disturb the moment. Richard sat in the front row, staring blankly at the floor. Vivian's poise had cracked. Her fingers trembled as she clutched her handbag. Noah slipped out first, avoiding every glance, his shoulders hunched like he could fold himself out of sight. Ava didn't approach any of them. She stepped off the stage with Ethan and Mr. Daniels flanking her like quiet guardians. As they entered a back corridor, Ava exhaled shakily. Is it over?
Ethan shook his head. Not yet.
The emergency session happens tonight. That's where they decide your father's fate.
Ava nodded slowly.
And Noah?
Mr. Daniels adjusted his glasses. He'll face consequences.
His position depends entirely on the board now. Ava's steps were slow, her ribs aching, but she didn't complain.
All I wanted was acknowledgement, she murmured.
Just once. Ethan answered softly. Today, they finally saw you. Ava paused, pressing a hand to the cold wall for balance.
My mother would have told me not to cry, she whispered.
Mr. Daniels replied. Your mother would have told you to stand tall.
And you did.
Ava inhaled deeply. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small. That evening, the board reconvened in a private conference room. The atmosphere was grim, businesslike, and unavoidably tense. Ava sat at the end of the long table, Ethan beside her, Mr. Daniels across from her. When the meeting began, the chairwoman addressed the room. In light of recent evidence, she said, we must decide the future leadership of Grey Tech. Richard refused to look at Ava. Vivian sat beside him, rigid and silent. The board first voted on Richard's removal. Hands rose one after another, unanimous. Vivian's attempt to speak was cut off gently but firmly. Mrs. Grey, you do not hold a board seat, the chairwoman reminded her. Then came Noah's fate. His work history includes repeated misrepresentation, a member said. He will be reassigned to a junior analytics role. No leadership privileges. Noah's face flushed with humiliation. Richard stood abruptly. You can't do this. The chairwoman's expression remained cool. We already have. Ava watched him, feeling neither triumph nor rage, only clarity. The board turned to her next. Ava, the chairwoman said, your mother's trust entitles you to her seat and the authority tied to it. Do you accept? Ava's voice was quiet but unwavering. Yes. The decision became official. For the first time, her name carried the weight it deserved. 2 days later, Ava returned to Seattle. Before going home, she insisted on one stop, the hospital where she had awakened to emptiness. She stepped into the room, the scent of antiseptic still faint in the air. The machines were gone. The sheets were fresh. But the memory remained sharp. The silence, the fear, the note. Ava walked to the window and touched the cool glass. The city below looked softer now, no longer a place where she hid her work in shadows. This is where everything started, she whispered. Ethan stood near the doorway, watching her quietly. You don't have to stay long, he said. Ava smiled gently. I'm not here for long. I just wanted to see it one last time, without the fear. She sat on the edge of the bed, tracing the fold lines of the note she still carried. When I first woke up, I thought I was completely alone, she murmured. But I wasn't. My mother left me everything I needed. Ethan stepped closer. She trusted you more than anyone. Ava breathed out slowly. I hope I did what she wanted. Ethan replied. You restored what she built. She'd be proud. Ava closed her eyes. For the first time, the room felt full, not empty. In the weeks that followed, Ava learned something her father had never understood. Silence wasn't weakness. Silence was space, space where truth gathered its strength, where plans formed, where legacy lived. She didn't chase revenge. She rebuilt what should have been hers all along. Grey Tech employees began to see her differently. Some approached her privately, offering quiet thank yous for systems she built years ago. Others admitted they'd suspected her work had gone uncredited. Ava listened, not with bitterness, but with clarity. She moved into her mother's old office, a wide, sunlit room filled with glass walls and quiet elegance. It felt like stepping into a promise. One afternoon, Mr. Daniels entered with a small wooden box. Your mother asked me to give you this when the time was right, he said. Inside lay a simple note in her mother's handwriting. When they erase you, don't disappear. Rise. Ava pressed the note to her chest. She knew, she whispered. Standing at the window, she watched the company campus below, busy, focused, alive. I didn't destroy my family, she said softly. I just stopped letting them destroy me. She turned back to the room, her voice steady. This is where we begin again. And for the first time, Ava felt wholly, completely alive. Ava settled into her new role with a calm focus that surprised even her. She didn't rush decisions. She didn't bark orders. Instead, she observed. She studied old systems, walked through departments quietly, and listened to employees who had never been asked for their opinions. During one meeting, a young engineer hesitated before speaking. "I don't know if this matters," he said nervously, "but your old workflow diagrams, they kept the company running when everything else crashed last year."
Ava smiled gently. "It matters. Every piece matters." Word spread quickly that Ava was nothing like Richard had been. Instead of ruling through intimidation, she built bridges, steady, thoughtful, sincere. Ethan remained by her side through most transitions, reviewing contracts and evaluating structures Richard had neglected for years. One evening, after a long day of board sessions, Ava leaned back in her chair. "I thought taking this position would feel like a burden," she admitted. Ethan glanced at her. "Does it?" She shook her head. "No. It feels like stepping into something I was always meant to finish." Ethan smiled slightly. "Then you're exactly where you should be." Ava exhaled, feeling her mother's presence again, quiet, steady, and proud. For the first time, leadership didn't feel forced. It felt earned. News outlets began reporting the grey tech shift within days. Headlines circulated online. "Daughter returns to claim mother's legacy, internal sabotage exposed, and grey tech's hidden architect steps forward." Ava avoided most interviews, but a journalist eventually cornered her after a board briefing. "Ms. Gray," she said breathlessly, "people want to know, how did you stay silent for so long?" Ava paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes silence isn't surrender," she said. "Sometimes it's preparation." The quote trended within hours. In the meantime, Noah struggled in his new junior position. Co-workers whispered but didn't approach him. Gone were the tailored suits, the special privileges, the meetings he used to dominate. One evening, Ava found him alone in the east hallway, staring at a blank monitor. He didn't look up when she approached. "Noah," she said softly. His jaw tightened. "You won," he whispered. "Is that what you think this is?" Ava replied. He turned, his eyes red. "You don't understand. Dad always said I had to be the face of the company." Ava's voice softened. "You didn't have to be the face, Noah. You just had to be honest." He looked away. "I don't know how to start over." Ava hesitated. "Then start with the truth. It's more powerful than you think." She didn't stay long. She just left the space open for him to decide. As the weeks passed, Ava's confidence grew quietly but steadily. She began restructuring teams, redistributing responsibilities, and promoting individuals who had been overlooked. One afternoon, Marcus, the head of security who had given her the notebook, stepped into her office. "Ms. Gray," he said, "I just wanted to check if you're settling in." Ava smiled warmly. "I am. Thanks to people like you." Marcus shook his head. "You did the hard part." He hesitated before adding, "My wife wanted me to tell you something. She works in R&D. She said the atmosphere feels different now. Lighter." Ava was moved by the words. "Tell her thank you," she said. "Change is slow, but it's happening." After Marcus left, Ethan entered with a stack of updated reports. "You're making progress," he said. Ava looked over the documents. "Not just me," she replied. "Everyone who kept this company alive in the shadows." Ethan watched her expression, focused but gentle. "You've rebuilt more than systems," he said quietly. "You've restored culture." Ava looked out the window, the sunset casting gold across the city. "My mother believed people deserved a workplace where they were seen," she said softly. "Maybe now they finally will be." Ethan nodded. "Ava, she'd be proud of you." Ava felt warmth spread through her chest. "I hope so." Despite the progress, the emotional aftermath of the summit lingered like a shadow. One rainy evening, Ava found herself standing outside the old storage closet that had once been her office. The flickering light still buzzed above the door. The chair still leaned to the left. Nothing had changed except her place in the world. She stepped inside slowly, running her fingers over the old desk. "I spent years in here," she whispered. Ethan appeared behind her. "You don't have to revisit this if it hurts." Ava shook her head. "It doesn't hurt. Not anymore. I just needed to see it so I never forget where I came from." Ethan folded his arms, leaning against the doorframe. "When I first met you in that hospital room," he said, "you looked defeated." Ava smiled faintly. "I was." Ethan tilted his head. "You're not anymore." She turned to him. "Do you think people will ever understand what really happened?" Ethan replied, "Some will. Others won't. But truth doesn't need permission to exist."
Ava stepped past him into the hallway, closing the door behind her.
"Then let's keep moving," she said.
"There's too much work to be done."
She didn't look back. She didn't need to.
The next major board presentation approached, Ava's first as the rightful heir of the company. She prepared meticulously, revisiting her models, reviewing projections, and rehearsing her introduction. The night before the meeting, Mr. Daniels visited her office with 2 cups of tea.
"You've come far," he said, handing her one.
"Do you feel ready?"
Ava took a slow sip. "Ready isn't the word," she answered. "But I feel grounded." Mr. Daniels smiled.
"That's enough." The following morning, the boardroom filled with anticipation. Ava entered with quiet confidence. The members rose respectfully, something they had never done for her father. She began her presentation, her voice steady and clear. She outlined new policies, highlighted innovation projects, and acknowledged the employees who had supported her without being asked. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment, then applause broke out, louder than she expected. The chairwoman leaned forward. "Ms. Gray," she said, "this company is fortunate to have you." Ava felt a swell of emotion but kept her composure.
"Thank you," she replied softly.
After the meeting, as she stepped into the hallway, she paused.
For years she had walked these same halls unseen.
Now, every step echoed with purpose. She had not just returned, she had risen. A few days after the board meeting, Ava received a letter from the legal department. It informed her that Richard had formally stepped away from all company matters. He would no longer hold voting rights, advisory privileges, or access to confidential systems. Ava read the letter twice before setting it down. There was no satisfaction, only a quiet sense of closure. That evening, she walked outside the headquarters, breathing in the cool Seattle air. Ethan joined her a moment later.
"How does it feel?" he asked.
Ava gazed at the lights in the building she once entered through the back door. "Like something heavy finally lifted," she said.
Ethan nodded thoughtfully.
"You've carried things alone for a long time." Ava wrapped her arms around herself. "I didn't realize how much until now." They watched the city in comfortable silence. Eventually, Ava added, "I don't hate him."
Ethan looked surprised.
She continued, "I just won't let him define me anymore." Ethan offered a small smile. "That's strength, Ava." She exhaled, letting the past drift quietly behind her.
"My mother taught me that," she said.
In that moment, Ava realized she had stepped into the life her mother had always intended for her, one defined by clarity, not chaos. Weeks later, Ava held her first town hall meeting with all Greytech employees gathered in the main auditorium. She stepped onto the stage, steady and confident.
"Thank you for being here,"
she began, her voice warm. "When I returned, I didn't know what the future would look like. But I knew this, the people who build a company deserve to be seen." Heads nodded across the room. Engineers, analysts, technicians, people who had worked in silence for years, watched her with quiet respect. Ava continued, "Going forward, credit will go where credit is earned. Innovation will be shared, not hidden. And every voice will matter." A wave of relief passed through the crowd. A programmer in the front row raised her hand. "Ms. Gray," she asked, "what made you come back after everything?" Ava paused thoughtfully before answering. "Because this company was built on my mother's principles," she said. "And because I realized I didn't need permission to claim what was mine." Applause rose, not loud or chaotic, but steady, genuine. After the meeting, several employees approached her with gratitude, some even emotional.
Ava listened to every story.
For the first time, she felt truly connected to the people whose work her family once overlooked. And they, in return, finally saw her as the leader she was becoming. One evening, Ava visited her mother's old home office, a quiet, sunlit room she hadn't entered since she was a teenager. Dust motes swirled gently in the air as she opened the windows, letting in fresh wind. The bookshelves were still lined with her mother's journals and technical manuals. Ava reached for a box labeled "For Ava, Later." Inside were sketches, handwritten notes, and a sealed envelope.
She opened it carefully.
Her mother's familiar, graceful handwriting filled the page. "Ava, if you're reading this, you faced what I feared.
But I always knew you would rise. You see people clearly.
You understand the weight of integrity. Don't let anyone convince you that your light belongs in the shadows. Lead with strength, not anger." And remember, legacy isn't a throne, it's a responsibility. Ava pressed the letter to her heart, tears filling her eyes. Not tears of pain, but of understanding. I did it, Mom, she whispered. I protected what you built. And I protected myself. She spent a long time in the quiet of that room, feeling her mother's wisdom settle around her like a soft blanket. When she finally stood, Ava felt lighter,
stronger, ready for whatever came next.
Spring arrived slowly in Seattle, painting the city with fresh colors. On a calm afternoon, Ava stood on the balcony outside her new office, watching the employees below move with purpose and ease. Gray Tech was changing, growing into the company her mother had always envisioned. Ethan stepped beside her, holding a folder. The annual innovation showcase is next week, he said. You'll be the keynote speaker.
Ava smiled.
I spent years building systems from the shadows. Speaking in the spotlight still feels strange.
Ethan chuckled softly.
Strange doesn't mean wrong. Ava rested her hands on the railing. Do you ever think about how all of this began?
Ethan nodded.
In a hospital room, he said. But you didn't stay there. Ava looked out at the horizon, the sky stretching wide and clear.
I didn't destroy my family, she said quietly.
I simply stopped letting them destroy me.
Ethan studied her expression. What happens now? He asked.
Ava breathed in deeply. Now, she said, we build.
We restore.
We honor the people who believed before anyone else did.
She glanced back.
At the bustling offices, her mother's words echoing softly in her heart. When they erase you, don't disappear.
Rise.
And Ava Gray, daughter, builder, survivor, finally knew she had. Tell me where you're watching from. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs it.